out and kind of putting the folks out there, these unsung heroes that we're not listening to, and sheroes. And it's important that the real talk is out there and not just the hyperbolic, let me just get this idea of who I want people to think I am versus, yo, it is what it is. We're jacked up right now. And all hands need to go on deck. There's no excuse right now. I'm not feeling sorry for you. You shouldn't feel sorry for me. So this concept, whatever y'all doing, the inception, however it started, congrats. This is what we need.
Thank you. And with that being said,
we are live.
SoundMinds. So only in this episode, right, would you get gems before the actual live, just because real people do real things. You know, and I just want to, you know, first and foremost, positive energy always causes elevation. Peace to everybody. Thank y'all for joining us on this Sunday, 7 o'clock. It's your man, Light Skin, LITESKIN, stands for living it through every situation known in nature. Got my co-hosts with me. They are definitely going to jump into who they are, just in case y'all might have forgot from last Sunday, but we out here. You know what I'm saying? Hey, my brothers, let's speak to them.
It's the lyrical healer, King Ra Shaman, a.k.a. King Ra.
And it's the rap poet, kind, madman, you, me, we. We ain't just podcasters. We the greatest lyricists you heard in your dreams.
Hey, let's go. So with that being said, you're not going to get this type of content everywhere. And we brought on 2 guests today that truth of the matter is, when you speaking upon education and when you speaking upon the ability to empower youth, we couldn't bring on 2 better guests. You know, for the most part, I am blessed to say that I know them personally. I am blessed to say that I've been working with them, and that to me is a luxury, and that's something that I definitely honor. You know, one brother who I've worked with for some years in the front line, and seeing his work and seeing what he's about and seeing everything that he's done, from being a teacher in the classroom, from being a teacher outside the school buildings, from being a coach, and just building dreams where most youth don't understand where to look for to have that built. And a sister who is by far one of my favorite people ever in life, since I've known her, and we've known each other for some years. So I don't want it to be a feeling of nepotism that we making these intros, but nonetheless, she is a super powerhouse. She is definitely on some real righteousness in regards to the empowering of not only our youth, but as well as the Black and Latinos and everybody who speaks upon education. So with that being said, this is our now 2nd episode. We backed up a little bit. 2nd episode, season 3. This is Educational Rebuild. And we have Dr. Soribel Genao and my brother Daniel B. Nartey II. Thank y'all very much for being here.
Yes.
And so if you both can give a little background of yourselves and so on and so forth, and you know, we'll jump right in. But I just want everybody to properly know who you are. And you know, I'm just gonna shut up.
I'm gonna defer to Soribel.
Hi everyone, I'm now. The G is an H sound. It is the colonizer's name. So I will put it out there. We're going to be frank tonight, and we're going to talk about all things that we need to decolonize. I am a professor of education and leadership at CUNY Queens College, and I am looking forward to tonight's conversation.
How you doing, everyone? Again, Daniel Nartey II. I'll go by Nartey. In a similar vein, my last name is from West Africa. My first name is a biblical name that was given or handed down to people in West Africa as Christianity came there. So let me not say came there, but as the Europeans brought their version of Christianity over into West Africa. So I always just go by Nartey. I find it very empowering. Yeah, 17 years into educating the youth, building with them in the school building, outside of the school building, households, wherever it might be. So I'm just grateful to be part of this conversation, and let's see where the night takes us.
Oh yes, wow. 17 years. Let's go. We got some things to talk about.
So we brought y'all on because we you know, in every war, you need your finest assassins. You need those who are specialists in what they do, whether it be the swordsman or the one that's nice with the rifle. You know what I mean? And truth of the matter is, when thinking about this episode for this podcast, I said, damn, I can't think of anybody more realer than people that I know that are going to speak from the heart. People that have had experiences throughout the educational system, but at the same time, people who know the front line of what it means to work with all our people, our young, our babies. So, you know, this is going to be very empowering, and not only that, but very honest and truthful. I could only expect nothing less from the two great guests that we have today. So I guess for the first question, I would say most important, just to kind of get somewhat a part of the intro. What brought you on to become the educators that you are, or got you into the field that you became way back in the past?
All right, I guess that awkward moment was for me. So interestingly enough, I born and raised in New York City, went to high school in the Lower East Side, Sewell Park High School. It was considered a dropout factory when I went. It was 90s. There's even a book called The Voices of Freedom, written by a white man, which is problematic in itself, about the issues of the immigrant and Black and brown communities that were being misled through their educational concepts. I remember sophomore year, may she rest in peace, my high school teacher asking us, what did I want to do when I grow up? And I said I wanted to be the head cashier of Fine Fair. And with that answer, she pulled me out of the classroom and said, I need you to never say that again. And she enrolled me in an internship opportunity with Oppenheimer Funds, which was basically going to the World Trade Center when the Twin Towers were around every Wednesday for 3 hours, 1 day a week, to be mentored by what? Another white person who didn't know me, didn't understand where I was coming from, didn't really need to do the work, because it was that savior complex, right? Like, here's a little brown girl coming into corporate America and I'm going to teach her the way. So you can only imagine 1995, the height of technology coming in, AOL, modem, right? It was very different, especially if you're from the hood and don't necessarily know how tech works. So utilizing all these opportunities to navigate. Fast forward, I'm ill-advised, and I end up going to post-secondary education at St. John's University. By the way, I didn't learn anything that was informative for me there. What I did get out of my experience at St. John's was how important it is to teach our students from middle school perspective what education costs in the United States, because they are the reason I had to get student loans. And nobody explained to me that the more classes you were taking, the more money you were going to owe later on, right? And it was because they definitely bamboozled us into taking all these courses to get paid out at a private institution. The summer after graduating, I went to Ghana to do research. I was supposed to be there for 2 weeks, but I fell in love. I found home. I was there for 3 months. I came back. I was enlightened. It was a little problematic because anybody that wasn't Black or brown, I was just like, I can't hear you right now. Like, you hurt my people. And I was enrolled in grad school at the time. I was a student at NYU. That didn't work out for me. I realized that the program was not challenging enough. I transferred to Hunter, where I fell in love with education policy, everything that wasn't fair. I majored in urban affairs and planning. I wrote my thesis on how real estate impacts education. So think about it, how every time we are looking to buy a home, we're thinking about their school systems. So growing up on the Lower East Side, I recognized that from the South Street Seaport, right? And I'm not talking about south of the Smith houses. I mean Smith. I mean there's another housing complex. So it's Smith, it's Rutgers, LaGuardia, Belatix, then going into Baruch, then Lillian Wall, then Jacob Reese, up until you get to Stuytown, right? And you not realizing that's a gold mine because what? There's a waterfront. But what they're doing is thinking that they're going to misplace us and displace us by putting us in a place where not only are we thriving because it's where all the jobs are, but they're keeping us as far away from what's happening in the inner city, and also making the school system be influxed with not just the poor texts and how do I say this? Like just really, really inconsistent to what the policies or Nation at Risk from 1981 when Reagan was on the, I said reggae because I love reggae, but when Reagan was, thinking about the war against drugs, right? So it was all propaganda, and it was meant for us to keep away from a system that we needed more help with. And when I wrote my paper, I'm like, hot damn it, this is so systemic. I have not been taught. I am not at par with where I'm supposed to be because this was already planned for me. So when I hear y'all talk about your trajectories in education, and now I can call people out, right? So I'm all about, like, if you did something, I'm going to call you out. So I worked at a nonprofit. I directed a whole program in the Bronx where I was working with overage undercredited students, District 75. And the director of the program was phenomenal. I'm a big believer in community schools. Mary Ellen Boyd told me that I did not have the credentials to create an audit for the program before the city came to see us. That pissed me off. So I went and I applied for a PhD program and I got the credentials. And when I was asked to come back, I said, that's under my pay umbrella. I can't do that. But in that experience with getting my doctorate, I also learned that even that, right, the colonization of education. So to George's point, when he posted Rutgers Fabric, I knew what he meant, but I also went to Rutgers University for my doctorate. And one of the things that I always think about is how Henry Rutgers, which is also the two streets that we grew up in on the Lower East Side, is one of the most racist people. One of the most racist people that we do not talk about. This was a philanthropist who had slaves living. So the fact that even Rutgers University is talking about changing their name, even though it's not going to happen, right? But the fact that they're talking about changing their name now is just like, yeah, we should deconstruct the Madisons, the Vanderbilts, the Washingtons, the Jeffersons, and yes, Rutgers. Like let's think about other ways to start thinking about these concepts. So that is how I got here. I ended up working at Queens College, which I absolutely enjoy. Not necessarily because we don't have issues. In fact, we have a lot of issues. But my students are so fierce. My students are all about just shaking things up, saying no when everybody else is saying yes. They are not yes people. They're about really making it happen. And I know one of them is on here, Ed Martinez, because I saw something he posted. But this is what we're talking about, like living the legacies in life of breaking these pathologies, because we are jacked up right now. And it's our time because what? Black Lives Matter.
Talk to him. Oh my God, well said. Should we go into questions with that, or should we let our brother jump in?
Yeah, I think Nartey, speak your piece, and then we definitely going, because there's a lot of stuff.
I hope you guys wrote down your questions, took some notes, because that was a lot right there. I hope you guys took some notes. If you're gonna wait.
I'm gonna be real with you. I'm glad, because I was in not even the back of my mind, in the forefront, right? Very much in the forefront, but kind of B-ish. I wanted to talk about nonprofits as well. You know what I mean? So but nonetheless, Nartey, go ahead, brother. Yeah.
All right, y'all. So born in the Bronx, shifted back and forth down south and back to the Bronx. I lived in North Carolina for some while, for a good little while, High Point, North Carolina. While I was there in elementary school, I actually was one of the first group of kids who were being bused to what they would call a white elementary school. And so going through that experience, you know, growing up and just having kids tell me, "Yo, I really can't play with you because, you know, you're not white." You know what I mean? So recognizing that experience, but also speaking about the 80s and the Reagan era and the war on drugs, we just, you know, caught in a situation where our family really just felt desperate, and where kind of everybody in the family kind of meddled in some type of illegal trafficking in some means, and that caused us a lot of my youth was just real. I was just everywhere a little bit with it, moving back and forth between New York and up here. Actually had a child when I was 9th grade in high school. You know, had a child, and ultimately had to move away from there. And we ended up living in a shelter up here in the Bronx. And during that time in the shelter, it was the first time I ever felt kind of shame in my life. But it was also the first time where I really cared about school. I'm proud of that. I really didn't care about school. I loved education. I loved learning. I had a Rastafarian elder, two of them actually, a couple, a woman named Carrie Thurman, Empress Carrie Thurman, and Ross Bob, and they kind of took me under their wing as a 13-year-old and said, "Listen, man, there's some books you need to be reading." So I would actually, if I had a day when I wasn't in school, they would break out a book for me, you know, talking about, you know, just Black empowerment, or, you know, like, "Hey, do you know who Paul Robeson is? Like, you're going to read this book about Paul Robeson right now." You know, so just it opening my eyes to a lot of things, and the idea just, you know, community, collectivism, just, you know, and recognizing that the idea that, you know, no matter how individual you might feel, if we all not moving together, you really didn't move anywhere. You know, so so when I got back up here and I was going to high school up in the Bronx, and going to Taft High School, and anybody know Taft High School in the 90s, like, we was known as training animals for tomorrow. Like, that's who we were. It was just a wild situation to be in that school. We actually had you know, a teacher had got murdered by a student about a couple years before I actually entered the school. So it was just chaos, and it was a school my mom really didn't want me in. But at the time, I had been out of school for so long, and I never really wanted to be in school. But as somebody living in a shelter, the only way I had freedom was when I was out of the building. And I knew that if I was in school, that was freedom. You know what I mean? So I would run off and go to school and try to be in school as long as I can, join any activity, run track all day long, then leave and sneak back into the building so nobody knew I lived in a shelter. And ultimately, that really motivated me to want something different or something better, and not fall down the same faults that my family had. I had a very intelligent brother who was getting poetry published in books when he was like 12 and 13, and he got caught up in hustling and spent a lot of time locked up. You know, I had another brother, 15 years old, 10 years, and it was just, he never been the same since. So I went from being the middle child and, you know, being a younger brother to being the oldest kid in the house really quick, and really didn't have brothers to look up to for most of that time. But ultimately, I started going to school and just trying to be there. And I figured if I'm there, I might as well do well, right? So it really was, I really felt like I wasn't really doing anything, but I feel like I was being rewarded for it. I really felt like I wrote my name on a paper and people just like, "Yo, look at you, like, you working," and nobody else it is. But really, it was the fact that I was always just conscious. I really just took things and thought deeper about them. I had some great teachers, Deborah Hector, Lionel Flax, Miss Barrett, Hutley, Mr. Oswald, Bowen Paul. And what ends up happening, while I'm in about 11th grade, the guy Bowen Paul, I actually got kicked out of a history class. I'm sitting in the history class, and I cut off all my little street stuff. I'm just in the school trying to be a student. And I had a teacher who was really obsessed with talking about slavery and feeling like we should be celebrating something regarding the slavery. And he was like, you know, we had a conversation. He felt like there was a holiday we should be, not a holiday, but he felt like we should be celebrating, you know, or commemorating the beginning of slavery in the U.S. And this is back in like 98. And I'm looking at him like, nah, we not really commemorating any of that. Like, that's not even what we talking about right now. And I just can't take it. I couldn't. And at that time too, I when my brothers were locked up, they sent me lessons. So I'm really very understanding of the Nation of Gods and the Earth, 5% Nation of Islam. So I had a certain understanding. I just wasn't going to let this dude say whatever he wanted inside this classroom to us. Everybody else might take it, but I got to stand up for it. And as I called him out on it, and it really got to where we almost went to blows over it. I get kicked out of his class, got sent to the other dude's class, and boom, they're actually doing film. They got a director coming from England, videotaping everybody, discussing what it's like to be from the Bronx, what your dreams are, what your aspirations are, what it is if everybody want to have a career, but only 30% of the kids graduate from our high school. So what does that really mean? How does that math add up? So while I'm already being a thinker, I'm here with them, and we thinking even when we building, and I know already that I want to do something for the neighborhood. Because at this time, I'm feeling like, really, I feel like the Bronx already is saving my life. Like, I was really obsessed with the streets and I was really infatuated with it. But now I'm thinking I want to do something, but I never wanted to be a teacher. My mom is like, are you going to be a teacher? I'm like, nah, I'm never going to be a teacher. Nobody want to teach nobody kids and nothing like that. But back in 99, I'm saying, you know, because the people videotaped it. I'm saying, I don't want to be a teacher, but really there's so much stuff going on. If somebody not bringing it to them, how they get it? You know, so while it was something I didn't want to do, it ended up being something that was placed on my path. And it was like, some people say a calling in a way. So I ended up doing real well. I got an opportunity to go to an Ivy League college from out of here. So I left the Bronx. I went to Brown University in Rhode Island. And I'm up there, and I'm still not trying to be a teacher, but I'm up there, and it's a big culture clash. And I already came from a place where the teachers who we had were from Westchester County. Feel me? They was from upstate. They came into our neighborhoods and they tried to, you know, talk to us, but they didn't really have an understanding of how we lived and why we lived the way we did. And if they did, it was either with that, like a little, like, I guess I'll say liberal sympathy, that sometimes it's not really sympathy. It's more like you feeling pity on me, you know, or it's the missionary thing. Like, oh, I'm about to go save everybody out here. So
no, that's right.
I wanted to get into a position to help, but I never wanted to, but I wanted to fight all that. And now as I get into college, I got everybody here like, yo, you from the Bronx and you this, and I'm here with everybody supposed to be really great thinkers. And I see these kids here aren't the great thinkers people thought they were. I see that 8, 9, 10 more of my classmates should have been Ivy League kids, but couldn't have the opportunities because we just didn't have resources. It was really slim pickings, where I knew that if it was an option for SAT prep, it was only one at the school who was going to get it. Definitely. So it was just crazy. So while I'm up there, I really couldn't manage a lot of it. I went through a little bit of depression. And while I'm at it, one of my boys was in the teaching program. He said, yo, just come through the teaching program. I went through, sat down, and guy asked me, yo, why you want to be a teacher? I was like, yo, I want to be a teacher because at almost every classroom I sat in, I never ever felt like there was anything that someone could say in that room that could relate to my life and what I was going through. Or I can understand how I learned or why I took that perspective. So maybe I'm wrong about something, and you can tell me I'm wrong about it, but if you can't understand my perspective, that means something to me, you know? And so when I said that, dude said, now you got to be a teacher. So I taught a summer class up there, summer program, and then I went into the Central High School, which is like just a regular neighborhood school in Rhode Island, just like a regular high school out here. And when I sat there, those kids woke me up. Like, I was in the Ivy League school, about to get kicked out. Going up there for nothing. I got the weight of the whole community on my back. Like, yo, you going off, you changing things, I'm failing. Acting probation, everything. I went and taught this class, and I was just like, I was alive. And so since then, I came back out here, man. I knew what it was. I had my graduation. I invited my whole entire class, my whole entire student class to come to my graduation, because I was like, this is a college graduation. Never saw one. You come see one. You come see one, because you know that me and you a reflection of me. So if we get in here, you know that you can do it. But I never saw one. So they got to see it before. So we all came here. They all saw it. And I knew I was going to come back to the Bronx. So I've been here 17 years straight up in these schools. I was in a comprehensive school in the beginning for about 8, 9 years. And I went to a similar school you mentioned, overage undercredited school, working with really, really at-risk youth. And I've been doing that right now, and I just don't see a reason to stop. It's in it. Opportunities to become a principal or whatever, or get into those programs. But for me, it's the classroom. I have to be in the classroom. It's different. People play different roles in this, and you get different lines you have to fight the battles on. But I know for me, if I'm not in the classroom, I would walk away from education.
Gee, man, wow.
My fault, just in the follow, just saying that throughout that time, The lady they actually followed the documentary. It actually follows me from 98 to about 2008. So about 10 straight years of just being a high school student, then my 4 years in college, and then 4 years into teaching, just to see that transition.
Crazy. What's the name of that documentary?
It's called Zoned In.
Zoned In. All right, so everybody go check that out. So
we can find that on YouTube.
You can find a trailer on YouTube. You can find a trailer of the documentary on YouTube. The actual documentary you can find on Amazon.
Amazon, bet. Let's get
fire. So, and this is a passion of the three of us too. You know what I mean? We work with the youth. We're educators in our own rights, and a lot of stuff that y'all said within those intros of who you are that lead to so many other things. One, I'm going to say, as in most systems created by this country, the educational system is not necessarily for Black and brown children. And we can tell that very much by how, school books and the curriculum, how they still are what they are, despite the fact of, everything that we see. Like, everybody could think a thought and, all of a sudden what you thought is on your phone. But nonetheless, the books that are being utilized to teach our children has not been advanced. But even more so scarier is what is in the classroom and who's teaching our children. So when Soribel has said, when Dr. Genao has said in regards to, what it is when you are in the classroom and understand the people, and even Nartey spoke on it too, when you see who's teaching you and you don't see a reflection of yourself, that within itself, the visibility of not seeing you in front of you teaching you does a lot to the mentality. So we're going to talk about that. We're definitely going to talk about the, for the most part, the nonprofit organizations as well, who have a lot of hours in there, but not necessarily teaching our young the way they should be.
I have a question. I have a question to just clarify some things with both of them. Specifically, what do each of you teach? And do out of the years, was it different things that you teach? And what are you most comfortable teaching? And is it important for you to teach a specific curriculum when you get in front of the students?
I'll go first. No, I'm just kidding. I just want to say before y'all answer this, yo, the professor got some student, like she's the rock star of professors, because the chat room on the YouTube, matter of fact, share your YouTube, share your IGs, your Facebooks, but on the YouTube, I'm hearing nothing but, Professor, what's up? Like, you got an adoring fan club, and I could tell these is like colleagues and students of yours. So rappers, y'all need to get like her in the classroom. But please, yes, what are y'all professions? What do you teach? And what is important for you to include in the curriculum, being that, like my brother said, that others are usually not going to put those gems in there.
Yeah, so this is my moment for a PSA, because Nartey said he doesn't want to be a principal, but when you're ready for that, you come to me, because what I do is prepare teachers to be administrators. So whether you want to be a principal, an assistant principal, a school building administrator of any kind, a school district administrator, that's what we do. So what would I say when it comes to curriculum? Because I teach a postgraduate program, so in order to become a student in our program, you must have been in the classroom for 3 to 5 years. And once you complete those 3 to 5 years, your application consists of letters of recommendations that have to be super tight, that actually vouch for who you are as a whole human being. So that's important to us, right? It's not, folks are just like, well, your program doesn't admit a lot of people. Yeah, that's their point. I don't want anybody coming in here because it's kids that look like me that I'm more concerned about. I'm not in the classrooms, but I am preparing people that are going to be in the classrooms with them. Quick story, my very first day in the classroom, 2010, white man in front of everybody asked, what could I possibly learn from you? it took me for a whole loop because I don't know how to respond to that. And 2 years into the program, he continues to take courses with me and asks, right before he's graduating, if I can write his letter of recommendation for another program he wants to get into. Now, I never threw shade at him. I never treated him as if he did say that. In fact, I was always cordial, would always invite him into conversations. And the reason for that is the way the white man thinks is very complicated, and we don't understand that. So it's important that even though we don't agree with them, we have to hear them because they're the ones that need the most dismantling. In all of that, after I just looked at him, asked, like, really, bro, you gonna come at me to ask me for a letter? I unapologetically said no. And I said, it has nothing to do with your comment on the very first day. It's just I am so afraid of you leading kids that look like me. I will never trust that you can lead not just a building, but a district. And as I've gotten more and more involved in building a curriculum for our program, I will say that my favorite class to teach is education law, because it's there that I'm able to break down what it is that people think they know and the unfortunate circumstances of how we are forced to understand this lawless land that they have created for us to systemically fall into. So it's like that.
Yes.
That movie when they say my condition is conditioned. Like, no, we're not going to do this anymore. And that was the part where I recognized that if I didn't work with my students, who I adore, because I know that, yes, while they're my students, they're going to be my colleagues and I need them. After they leave our program, I'm going to need them. It doesn't stop there.
Yo, you got my wife ready to transfer from her admin program into your program. Yo, like, tell me, am I lying? She never come on the screen. Am I lying? She never come on the screen. She was literally just writing a grad school inclusion diversity thing for administrators. She's like, who's this? I need to be at her class. So you might get an email.
No, yeah. She definitely, yeah. And I think that's the beauty of this, right? Because setting the stage for the connections to be, you know, in a sense, everything is based on the united front that is created. This right now, you know, allowing, you know, Nartey and Soribel to join together, allowing, you know, Self-Suffice's wife, I'm not going to say her name on camera, but allowing her to feel like, damn, there is something that, you know, and that's the beauty of this, that we are for way too long. And that's what we're going to get into too. For way too long, we have kind of been sprinkled upon. You know what I'm saying? Whenever you sprinkle upon anything, then that means there's not enough of you to try to kind of take over what is going on, especially if it's for your own. So I love the fact that people are commenting, and I love the fact that there's that connection. You know what I mean? So
I love the position you're in too. Like that's a position to really, like, you know, highlight. She's in position that sees the people that gets put in front of the youth. You know, that's a powerful position. Oh man, tongue tied. But no, I definitely commend you for that one, 100%. Woo, powerful.
I'm still dead from how you phrased. This has nothing to do with the comment that you made to me on the first day of class. That's such a black woman of color thing to say right there. Like, we could end the episode on that too. Like,
no, we have elephant brain. We don't forget anything. But what you're not gonna do is expect me to say yes to you.
My brother Nartey.
All right, so I started out teaching humanities. That's how I started when I first started teaching. But I had always my minor or my focal point has always been history. I very well versed in West African history, Caribbean history, Asian history, like all history basically. So right now, what I've been doing basically for the last for the 17 years, outside of those first 2 years of doing humanities, is I've been teaching world history, economics, American history, civics, and yeah, that's basically been it. That's for the most part. I get to have a lot of creativity with electives and do kind of my own thing with electives. As far as curriculum, or let me just say, like, I personally knew I was going to go into from a history standpoint, just because you know, when you talk about the locks, I think in terms of history, that's always been an area where we've always had to have somebody else, or not say had to, but where they've always told a different story or told or highlighted other people over us. So I personally enjoy teaching American history because I can counteract so much of what's been what our kids kind of hear or see or is given to them based on any form of media. But my main area of expertise would be world history. You know, so
man, if we had a mic drop moment, if we had a mic drop sound something, that SoundMinds to that, my brother. Yeah. Two powerful positions, and
you know what? Real quick, not to cut you off. You know what's crazy? That Nartey is being so humble. Yo, his economics class, I've seen students sit there, and he has this project where he has them kind of create an idea of something, and they got to kind of learn how to sell it. From that, I have seen some of my young brothers and sisters, man, who I still stay in contact with, man, still love them, now become entrepreneurs off of that class. And when we're talking about curriculum and what's needed for our children, right, our youth, that's the type of thing that I'm talking about. What's needed to teach the young mind to learn how to be an entrepreneur and create for themselves, so that we don't have to work for others. No longer do we have to learn how to become workers for an employer where we need to get that okay from them just to be somebody. And this man, and on top of that, created a football team for young ladies that my brother is out there on a humble. And when I tell you that effortlessly, I've seen him in classrooms, outside of classrooms, I see him constantly teaching. So I only say that to say, this right here is the epitome of what's needed in our schools, especially for our youth. So I just wanted to put that out there because my brother's not going. He's not going to wave that flag.
Humble. Look, even in the chat, they say that's impact, man. They see how impactful you is right now, man.
I try not to really, you know, I like it to be about the work. You know what I mean? I'm about that work. When the kids, you know, I take all whatever accolades they give me, I take it and mean everything to me. That right there is where I know that everything I set out to do is being accomplished. But on a personal note, I try not, you know, I don't really put too much out there. I just be about that work. And you know, I always said, you know, when you do that work, everybody know you already. You know what I mean? They know you already. And if it's not your peers or your administrator, it's whoever it is that's being serviced by you. So those kids let me know when they give me a plaque or whatever it might be. It is what it is. I mean, for a lot, like, the same way Lightskin talked about the connections with them, man. Like, if it's a baby shower, Nartey, come to my baby shower right now. Like, if it's my mom's birthday, come on over here right now. I'm graduating from this. I'm doing this. So I stay as connected as I can be, because just knowing that you want to be in a position where there's a connection between the school, education, and the community. And when you don't have that connection, that disconnect is when we go into the building and don't care what's going on. You know, but if I can walk outside and it happens in other people's neighborhoods, in other neighborhoods it happens. They go and they see their teacher at the grocery store. You know, they go and they see them on, you know, while they doing something with their kids or whatever. And so they have those understandings, those connections, those lines of respect. And it's not just about what you are doing, what you aren't doing. It's about the fact that you remember my community. So my success is connected to your community and the success of your community. And so that's why I'm here. I teach here. I live here. And if I go out to the park, I'm going to see you. If I go to the movies, I'm going to see you. And if you walk in the street with your kid, I'm going to see you and say, oh, that's your baby. I hope they middle name Nartey because you know I do the work with you. You know, so that's really how we do it. But that econ project, the kids can't stand it. But it's a business plan project. You create a business plan. You after you create the business plan, you can you got to make a commercial for it. Well, before you make the commercial, you got to write a 10-page paper, a group paper, about the business plan. Basically, what the idea is, how you guys started your business first, how you guys started your business, how you came together, what the idea is, what's the product made out of, what does it do, what competition really exists on the market, what are the weaknesses of that competition, and how does that create the avenue for your product to come into the lane? And then lastly, how do you advertise your product? So what techniques and promotions you're using to advertise that product? Then they finalize that with they have to actually film a commercial. Then they do a presentation where they want to get you to invest, like kind of like a Shark Tank. And
I was just about to say, this is a baby Shark Tank right here. Like, I was just about to say that.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a baby Shark Tank right there. Yeah, that needs to listen, any other schools and programs and nonprofits out there that hear this, welcome. We got to get this nationwide. We got to get this spread out. That's a great program right there. Go ahead, guys. I was gonna say, anybody else as far as self-suffice and light, you got a question to ask? Because I do got another one that we can go to.
Are you kidding me?
Let's go.
You say, do I have a question? Yo, I'm trying to hold back. I'm on my best behavior right now, so don't provoke me. Like,
can we hit him with those questions? That's as.
Can we make this a three-part? Can we make this a three-part? Because I'm trying to choose my questions. Can they be regular guests on the show? Is my question. Can they be regular? Maybe we should just add a SoundMinds Saturday featuring Nartey and Dr. Soribel, and then we could do Sundays with regular different guests, and we could have Saturdays with them every Saturday. Because I'm gonna have way too many questions. But let me stop with the question first, and let me pause and say thank you for being who you are. Okay, let me start with gratitude. Thank you for being who you are. You're something. I come up with all these phrases that I'm not gonna find from a white supremacist system, but I need in my life to explain things. And one of them is localized, inclusive criticism from within versus alienating criticism from without. And I remember I had a scholarship. Light knows I went to like the nerdiest school in New York, Stuyvesant High School. Then I went and got this scholarship on Wall Street for this art and business thing. So even as I was pursuing getting my record deal, I was pursuing my business information. And when they put me up there in front of all these CEOs to like criticize my business plan, like I was 99% sure that they were attacking me. You know what I'm saying? And there was 1% of me that was like, wait, I got a scholarship here. I'm like one of the top students here. I'm doing good. But the way they was grilling me was exactly everything you just said. You asked them this, you asked them that, you asked them the third. And it's like when you're being asked that from your mom or your dad or your brother or somebody who loves you and is grilling you to the third degree, like this is light basically as adults. You know what I mean? Light was like this on a block. Soribel may know, and he still is to this day. You know what I mean? Like it's localized, inclusive criticism. You know what I mean? And it's why certain groups do not. We don't like to hear being called certain words because it's like if you call it, it's from within the group. I know you're not saying you over there. You know what I mean? You're ironically identifying with the fact that we're called these words together, right? You're ameliorating, you letting the trauma and the charged up trauma out of the word. But when it comes from outside, it sounds like you calling me something that you're not called. So this is one of the things that I don't know if you're going to be asked on a lot of podcasts, but doesn't it matter? Like, not just for a white teacher to tell black kids and a white man to tell women that they are smart and they believe in them, but doesn't it matter to have someone who would raise kids that look like you, regardless of their skin color, but to really be convinced as a child? Don't you think children feel whether someone feels like they would be your aunt or your uncle? Because in all this pedagogical research, there's certain things like the golem, there's certain points to touch on it, but they always beat around the bush. Like, isn't it essential to have an educator that would raise children that look like you in order for you to feel as a young person that you're going to come out on top of anything that's given to you?
So self, one of the things that you started saying at the top of this point was all the questions that were being thrown at you and you started questioning yourself. That's called imposter syndrome. You were there because you were qualified to be there. What they're doing is doing the whole psychosis of let's see how we can shake him up so that he shoots himself out of this opportunity. Don't let them come for you that way. And it's one of those things that, again, going back to the conditioning, right? That's just how we think. And to your point, there's so much research out there, right? If we're going to start thinking about how we can, and it's on the question, like, what advice do you have for those who are not in your classroom, right? That level of cultural relevancy is so important. If you are a white man or woman and you do not know your community, then get out and get to know it. The bodegas need to be in it. The shoemaker needs to be in it. The bakery, the cab service prior to Uber and Lyft. The bus driver that stops at that bus. Why? Because they're the ones that see these kids coming in and off the communities, the train stations, the bus stops. They're the ones that whose faces they're going to constantly remember. That's called community. Just because you don't live there doesn't mean you're not a part of it. Bring them in. That's where CBOs and nonprofits, sorry, because I believe in acronyms so much, community-based organizations, that's when they come in. And what schools fail to realize is that partnering with community-based organizations alleviates, not just from a budget perspective, but alleviates the workload. Comprehensive high schools for years had a caseload of like 500 to 1,000 students that they were quote unquote counseling. Who says one person can actually do that? Where do they do that at? So what you should be doing is bringing in the community-based organizations to assist, because they are what? Trained to have social workers, school psychologists, and any supported services that you need inside your school. In addition to that, the schools then alleviated to use that budget into something like what? New curriculum. Invest in the work that actually will teach them. Stop trying to put a Band-Aid on things that don't necessarily always need a Band-Aid. They need surgery. We need to like completely unpack what you have delivered to us.
Break down and rebuild.
They are horrible. These are lies that we're constantly taught. And usually it takes us, going to Nartey's point, they don't realize how much of critical thinkers our kids are. They go into post-secondary and start digging up this information on their own. And then that's when the questioning starts. Why? Because there's no high-stakes testing there. We don't have to deal with this Common Core, which, by the way, really started in 1969, but they waited for Obama to get in office so that they can say, oh, we threw that on the black man. But we'll leave that for another day. And then what ends up happening is we have our students come in and have to deliver their poor education in their freshman years, which causes them to take all these remedial classes. So by the time that they're ready to major in something, they've already done like 3.5 years in having to take the required courses. And that's not fundamentally functional. That's not how this is supposed to work. Everywhere outside of the US, our students do not pay for education the way that we do. And yet we're constantly being compared to them. We have something called the TIMSS report. How dare you compare the US to other countries like Singapore, Germany, and there's one more, and Finland. How can you compare us when we're not homogenous? We take everybody in and y'all decide who you want to take in. So here are the moments where we're just like, no, don't compare me to a whole group that is not about what we're about. We cannot be compared. So there's so many levels of miseducation, misunderstandings, not because we're not learning it. We've just been fed and not challenged it.
I wanna just jump in on that real quick. Dr. Soribel, I really love that comment about, you know, Finland, Germany, Singapore. Like we get these studies in front of us. I'm like, Man, who would they teach? What class? What's the demographics of that class they had out there in Finland? That ain't my demographics, man. I'll take this somewhere else. That's not gonna impact anything I'm doing here. You know, and it's like it's okay, it's good data, but that's not here, and it's not the reality. You know, so I'm just glad to hear you mention that, because it's always something that bothers me, and every time I'm reading some kind of study. But I would definitely say that it does matter to have, you know, someone who looks like you to tell you you are intelligent, that you can succeed, that you will succeed, just because of the fact that because of the way society is, and because of, you know, things that some truths that we know. I'm not saying truths, but some beliefs that we know exist out there. It's this idea that we just aren't worthy of certain things, that we don't have certain ability. And so to have somebody who look like you's coming, you know, look you inside this classroom and say to you, you know what, you can do all this. You'll be on all this. In fact, you're a great thinker. I know that if you had the opportunity, you can succeed anywhere you go. That means something, because they understand. They don't just understand or know, but they internalize. They can internalize the majority of the issues that I may run into while I'm going on that path. So because they can internalize it, it means so much more. Because I can also start that path and come back to them and say, you know what, you did this. You told me this might happen. I'm going through it now. What do I do? How do I respond to it? How do I flip it? So it's always going to matter. It's also important because we have to break down this idea that dream builders are white people. We have to break down that idea that they are the ones who are the gatekeepers, that they're the ones who will allow you to unlock your mind and open up the door. We have to break that idea down. Teaching for 17 years, I'll tell you, there's been times when I've been inside classrooms and I got the best relationships with my kids. It's something I have to call them out sometimes, because even the ones who love you and recognize you, the programming is already on their head. Well, they'll walk into a room and assume that because that teacher in that room is white, that whatever they're going to get is more valuable than they can get inside a classroom with a teacher who is not white, with a Black or Latino teacher. So they might give you the ultimate respect. They might know where you come. I sometimes have to say, yo, come on now. Y'all know how we operate. Y'all know, number one, the love is here. Y'all know, number two, I'm not going just based on whatever this book said. And three, but how is y'all just sat inside that room and gave them 40 minutes of complete what you need to tell me, but you walked up in here, wow. And the reality is that in our communities, we get taught, if it ain't coming from somebody white, what value is it? What value is it? So we gotta have that. And the more we break that down, the more we build our communities, right? The more we build, because it's the same with business. Oh, I can buy from my brother, but that you know, that big business that, you know, the franchise got, I'm gonna go over there, you know. And so until we learn to seek that, to find that value in ourselves, we're always gonna have issues, and even issues with that imposter syndrome, because we don't have that value within ourselves. Or what happens is we go out there and we feel alone. So we out there alone and got nobody who we can connect to that helped us get there. I was up in school and, you know, I had 4 teachers who I could turn to. I mean, not get it wrong. I had teachers of color I could come back to. But when I was there, I had like 4 teachers who I was leaning on. They was all white teachers. And it benefited me that they were there I could lean on them. But it was certain parts of my journey, certain parts of my struggle when I was up in Rhode Island that they couldn't say anything to me about. They could never say anything to me about it because they didn't know the walk of it. So we gotta have that. It's a value. That's why I love to be inside the classroom. And but again, it extends outside of it. And so when talking about the question of what, you know, how do you get involved with the youth, but you're not inside of school or whatever, it's like there's so many programs for the youth. Jump inside some of these programs, arts programs, again, coaching programs. When I built this thing for the girls, it was football, but it wasn't football. It was beyond football. You know, that was just the glossing on it. But the reality is I took girls in our school, again, overage, undercredited, all kinds of issues in the household, you know, all kinds of issues with self-esteem or whatever. And I found a way to bond them with other girls from the building, but who didn't go to our school. And now these girls from the other school, they applying to college. They talking about, oh, I want to, you know, they talking about careers, but the girls in my school aren't talking about any of that. But now we out there on the field. So while they playing football, what they talking about? I'm applying to such and such school. I'm doing this internship. I'm doing that. So now my girls is like, well, I'm not, what? Y'all doing all this stuff. So now we having these other conversations, and it's crazy. They kicked a couple girls off the team. It was like, your grade's not good enough. You know, you can't be part of the team, and they throwing fits. And You know, I said, you know what, they paper say this, I'm not losing you. You on this team. Feel me? We're gonna find a way. I'll create 30 extra games that ain't even official games because you're gonna play on this team. But I wrote a letter to the PSAO, and I'm like, you know, for every hour these girls are out on the field, it keeps them away from a problematic relationship, issues in the household, keeps them away from the struggles of youth that result in things like teen pregnancy, right? So if I have them out here and you allow them to play, we building these girls because just the influence of being around positive people. But the minute you tell them they can't do this because of a grade here and there, you basically feed them to the streets. And that's why we got to get rid of some of these policies, you know, that aren't really beneficial to our community.
Yo, you know what's crazy? Damn it, man. Rob, my fault, brother. Listen, I feel like this is needed to be said. The importance of having those that reflect our youth in the classroom is by far detrimental to the futures and lives. Even more so detrimental and important is that when hours are teaching hours, right, that you're teaching them right. Because if you're doing the job, because based off of what Nartey was building on too, policies, procedures, politics, that plays way too much of a hand in the educational piece that we are trying to teach our young from. Black, white, brown, it doesn't matter, right? Whenever politics plays a role in the classrooms of all black and brown children, what it does is it takes away from the actual educating and the actual bettering of a life. And what you're doing is damn near criminal. So I say that, and I challenge everybody who is in the educational or just social service, and you're working with youth, or you're working with your part and what you do for the lives in which that you're serving is to serve them correctly. And when you poison their minds, right? Because when you look like us and you poison us, that's the Jim Jones right there. So when you serve that purpose of playing Jim Jones and poisoning your own people, what you're really doing is worse than anybody else could be doing. So important, we need our own in the classrooms. Even more important is when ours are in the classrooms, learn to properly advocate for our youth. Because truth of the matter is, at the end of the day, when you're leading them to, I've had people, be very honest with you, I've had our own tell our youth how to scam and get money by creating fake funding and fake funding sources so that you could go buy a car. I've had other people push our black and brown children into lying about test grades just to push them out of high school. And now when they're in college, they don't even know what it is that it looks like to really fully be educated because your educators haven't been properly educating. So I just got to put that out there, y'all. And my fault for Rob. Go ahead, brother. Your question.
No. I was just responding on saying how powerful it was, and what he was speaking about with the football team reminded me of, situations what happened when I was playing football where, a brother on the team fell off the team, but at the same time, coach was like, just because you fell off the team don't mean you can't come to practice. You still got to be at practice. You still going to be up at the games. You got to be on the sideline. You got to be with the team because you're not just going to be going home doing nothing. They put it in a way to get their discipline was to cut them off and not have them doing anything, but that's not the solution, and our coaches were also able to see that as a problem and take a step up and stand for like, no, you're going to get that right. We're going to help you get that right, but you also going to stay here on this team and come to practice, and you also going to flip those tires. You're going to run these 110s because you failing straight up. And if you don't want to do this, you want to get back on the team, come on. We're going to make sure we do study hard now before we come out, and then you come out for practice. It was working with us, and I was able to see the same exact thing.
I think to George's point earlier, and I think Nartey alluded to this as well, right? So yes, representation matters, right? But here's the worst kind of racism that we have to be careful about is what Zora Neale Hurston said, not all your skin folk are your kinfolk. right? Just because they look like you do not mean that they have their best interest in you. And it just so happens that those are the ones that are constantly being puppeteered into this white supremacist behavior, right? Think of when we were growing up and we were taught to dress for success. That's white supremacist shit, right? Why is that professional? Right? Why are we dressing with a suit and tie? Now, don't get me wrong. You will never see me sloppy. And I love a good look, right? Because when I look good, I am good. But I am not going to fit into this paper cut suit that you're going to place me in. Another idea is this whole respectability politics. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Great. You know, out of respect, okay. But I'm not going to lose my authentic, true self because I am the non-threatening brown girl, right? I'm walking in and I always think about this with my dark-skinned colleagues and sisters, how sometimes when they see me, they're just like, oh, she's light-skinned, she's not that fearing. But I also think that my dark-skinned sisters who are super duper brilliant need to be heard. It's not our fault that you have been conditioned to fear them and that your body's now responding to them as the angry Black woman. No, we're not angry. We're just fed up. We're just fed up, and we're all fed up. And we're not going to continue to allow you to have this socialist, racist mentality of how you want us to view us because you put that on us. And we have to constantly work every single time and having these rehearsed conversations in our mind of if they say this, if they say that, here's how I'm going to respond to it. Here's what I may say. And then we're caught in the moment and we're just like, shit, I didn't say any of that. Right? Because it's crazy.
Is there an example from an experience that you can give us, you know, to really home in on this point that you're breaking down right now, you know, for the youth and for others who's listening to actually see that authenticity, like you've been through it, you stand on this, you stand on what you speak on because you've been through it, or maybe a point that you may know of someone else going through, maybe you not personally.
No, so I right now I'm also the diversity fellow at CUNY, which means that because of George Floyd, now they want us to tell them what to do, right? And I've been very frank with them. It's not that we're going to tell you what to do. Y'all just have to actively listen this time. Like, you've never had the answer, and we've always had the answer, and here's what to do. And a great example, so in higher education, when you become a professor, you, like in any other school system, have to work to get tenure. So for 7 years, I was basically doing this bid, right? Trying to prove myself, publishing, being out in the field, making sure that I was doing the service work that mattered in the community, which, by the way, is what gives me all of the thrill. Publishing research is important, but if we're only writing for one another, who cares? I'm not Beyonce. People don't see me in the street and start jumping. Like, I'm not here for that. And then you have the teaching effectiveness, right? How many times did I get teacher effectiveness that was unsatisfactory because I called a white person out or I made them uncomfortable? You have your white privilege and you can do that. All well and good. What ends up happening is then I wait for me to get that final letter of getting tenure. And what happens? Now they can't shut me up because what? I am in the game and I'm no longer on the bench. You do not have the right to tell me what I can and cannot say anymore. So that's that inauthentic, like, oh my goodness, I'm here. I have so much to say. I have all these critical ideas. This agenda that they're talking about, this has already been done. Why don't they see who's actually doing this? And then when you go and see whose name is on there, you're just like, really, bruh? Like, that's all you got? But then you have to mind your intellectual property, right? Because they don't know that we are cute and Black and smart. And then when we come with all of this, they're just like, hold up. Wait a minute. She was being underutilized. And now you got to what? Pay me. Because I am not going to give you what you should have known I had.
Yes. Sound minds to that. Self-suffice, you spinning in your chair over there and everything. Hey, I see that. I seen you jump up. I seen you jump up.
Yo, Yo, when she spoke about how you being asked for candid feedback, but you're really being asked to get fired, and how many times, and this is outside of education for all of our listeners, how many times have you as a person of color been subjected to scrutiny, not random scrutiny like Facebook, YouTube comments, but scrutiny in the workplace where someone's gonna mark or grade, right? And you know they doing a poor job of doing their job. They're your supervisor. You're helping them improve their job and making them look good. And they're gonna come over and give you demerits and marks, right? And so when you're asked to give candid feedback, you're really being asked to either subject yourself to getting scrutinized and losing pay and putting your family and your well-being in jeopardy, or to say something in the most politeful Langston Hughes, Jay-Z, creative, flipping, like she said, black girl magic, cute use of black boy joy, flipping the language in order to tell them, like, y'all, you're whack, and I'm trying to help you, and you're not listening to me, right? Whereas if it's just to the average white person in the workplace, they're just being asked for their honest feedback. And it's crazy to me because I'll hear, you know, some of my colleagues and coworkers sometimes say the most like honest, confident like thing that I would love to come off like that too and just give honest feedback. But like, it's amazing that we have to give this beautiful, flourishing language
The
and
next
still
time
feel
you are
bad about it.
confused or conflicted, just think like a mediocre white man and hit submit. I promise it'll be accepted.
So I'm gonna, if I can, just to even on that note, like the just talk about how it will be accepted, and which is why, as you mentioned before, Dr. Soribel, about, you know, maintaining your own authenticity. And that's why I've always, and it's tough as a youth educator, you know, when I come in and I say, listen, I'm not going to ever tell my students that there's a value in code switching. And it's like a lot, but that's controversial for a lot of people, especially people who look like us, because some people look like us will tell you, oh, you know, it's powerful. You know, code switching is how, you know, it's like being multilingual, and it does the X, Y, and Z for you. But I always say, you know, it's so many initiatives that's supposed to help us get success that do nothing but maintain the status quo. You know, so many things that they push on us, you know, and that idea of it, you know, and talking about how we have to get some of our own people, that our skin folk ain't really our kinfolk, who are in there impacting these minds, but still have those white supremacist ideas, you know. So it's like, if it's always one-sided, because they're saying with that mediocre white man can just type that email and say whatever he wants, and it's going to be valid. But they'll never have to say, you know, I got a code switch because I'm over here. But he can always walk into that room and be heard just because of the fact he's a white man, right? And that's part of the way that we devalue ourselves, and part of the reason why we have those syndromes, why we have that vulnerability, why when they say something, we fall into that little space, because we've always been taught that thing about success is not really you. It's about how you adapt to them. So definitely we got to hit that and definitely disrupt that status quo.
I got an actual quick question that I could get my brain together. Like I said, I need y'all to come on here every Saturday so I could calm down, because my brain is going crazy. Thank y'all for being here. Everybody listening, let them know SoundMindsHipHop.com. Join us live. We got about 20 minutes left in this. Don't miss it. We're posting questions and comments live right now on Facebook, on YouTube. Hit your people up. This is crazy right now. This is what you pay $60,000 in school to get, but you don't. It's a gamble. This is guaranteed. Tune in and get this education right now. Here's my question. When you're teaching your students, as well as when you're talking to those who are authorities in your field that have some control over your well-being and your means of paying the bills, what's the role of emotion as opposed to juxtaposed with information? I feel like we've touched on it a lot, but let's go directly there, right? Because, for example, if I feel like I'm traumatized and I'm a student and I come into school and I feel like my authority figure is re-traumatizing me versus helping me heal, am I really absorbing the information, no matter how correct the information is? If it's a matter of an authority, right, outside of school, and I say the best information, but they're hearing me as the angry Black woman, right? Aren't they filtering all the great information I'm giving them through this emotional filter that they have that has nothing to do with me and my information? So I ask y'all, what is the role? Because I don't think people really get it like we do. What is the role of emotion proportionally juxtaposed with information when you're teaching and when you're working? And what are some ways that we can help get that if it is an important proportion, a way that we can get through these emotional barriers that people try to act like it's not there, and it has nothing to do with our education and our workmanship.
And let alone hold on to those emotional, attachment. We have that attachment to what we're teaching too. We want to hold on to it. We get up in there, we get knocked down. They want to knock us off what we coming in with.
So when I think of your question and I quantify emotions, I'm always at 100, right? I can't do this without putting my whole self in this. My emotions are always at play because, one, not only am I an empath, but I am a reflection of the students that 75% of the white teachers in our nation are teaching. I came from that, and I will never forget that, right? I just can't. But, I was having the conversation today with like my closest, I mean, she's just invaluable to me. When we were speaking about like what happens with these children that are growing up with all this trauma and what makes them so unique to come into the classroom and have to, again, to Nartey's point, code switch, forget that they're going home to a traumatic place, but from 8 to 3, they are busting their little behinds down so that they can forget about what they have to go to, right? And it's a lot. It's a lot, right? And as somebody that's teaching in post-secondary ed, that's still my trajectory in thinking, I have to constantly find that village, whether it's on campus or with my own family and friends that I rely on and just, check this out. I'm going through this. I don't even need your advice. I just need you to be a soundboard. Just hear me out. But that active listening plays such an important role in how we not just code switch around them, but how we code switch with each other. When George Floyd happened, in my department, there are 25 employees, faculty members. I am not the only of anything. If anything, my department is probably one of the most diverse on the campus. Now, one white person reached out to us to see how we were doing. So I waited for Sunday, right? The Christians' day of their day. And I decided to reach out to them and say, thanks for your silence. We see you. Not one of you checked for us. But now we know who's really about this social justice movement and who we don't need to work with anymore because you're just not there. One of the women then came and asked, I still have these grapplings when it comes to dealing with how I work with people of color on campus. I said, so your question is, stop saying yes. And if you're not ready to work on something that Black and brown people are going to be on, because it's clear when you walk into a room and you see us, your body is telling you something. Your emotions are racing inside. You don't know how to respond to us because you're so worried about what Mr. Rothberg is going to say to you. And that's not okay because we see it and we feel it. When you give us your mediocre feedback and expect us to work magic with nuts. So all of that to say that our students feel it, Our communities feel it. This work is soul work. This is not for the vain. This is about either you're in it completely or you just don't understand it. You can read about it and you can memorize stuff, but that doesn't say or mean that you actually get it. And why invest your time and energy in something that somebody else? You know, we recently had, and I'll leave it here, we recently had the latest case of, I don't know if y'all remember Rachel Dolezal, the white woman who swore she was Black. We had 2 cases like this in academia recently. What makes it worse is that these are 2 women who took opportunities from real people of color because they were out in these streets faking jacks and talking about, I am Latina, I am Black. No, you're not. Go back to your Midwestern rich dad who's gonna be able to afford your college opportunity and give it to the person that deserves it, right? So we deal with all of these moments all the time because I'll be honest, I don't trust them. And I've said this to my own bosses, unless we're having an inclusive meeting that's gonna be conducive for the betterment of not just us, but the students, this is not gonna work. So emotions is 100% at play here.
I second that and just say that I just don't think I don't think you can ever really disconnect it. And I feel like if there's anybody who won't hear something that you're saying because they want you, with the emotion you project to cloud that view or your point, they're not going to hear you anyway. And no matter how you said it, or no matter how you presented it. Just like when, you know, we get the people who say, okay, I'm not going to give my child a Black name or a Dominican name or whatever because I want to get a job interview. Whoever wasn't going to invite you to a job interview over your name and decided to take you now because your name is Harry or whatever, that's still nobody you want to work with. That's nobody you want to work for. It doesn't change anything, you know. So it's important that we recognize that, as someone mentioned, is that's pure a tool of white supremacy. Is I can't hear you. You're too emotional. You're too emotional here. You know, I can't hear you. You know what I mean? So that's something that we can't ever let ourselves fall for that okie doke with. You know, but I also heard, I feel like I heard another aspect of the question, which is more like emotional distress. So it's like if there's a student coming into the room and they have emotional distress, I can't just throw all this information at them. If that emotional distress has not been addressed, that we have not tried to find a way to speak on it, you know, whether it be to send you off to the CBO or to send you off to the social worker, you know, or to just take you outside for a second, or even say, yo, do you need a little bit of space? You might just need the space. Take that space, take your file, take your 10, you'll get work back when you know, let me know when you're ready to go, you're ready to go. Sometimes it might just be a moment. So a kid might have to take that moment to cry. You go to them, listen, you crying right here, you in the back of the room, you want to go somewhere. Nah, I don't want to go nowhere. Just let me get, you know what, get it out. Ain't everybody else, ain't nobody gonna look at you, say nothing to you. Get it out. Let me know when you're ready to go. And in 10, 15 minutes, I might be ready to go. And so we can move. So in terms of emotion, you know, when speaking to a superior or a colleague, that's all smoke and mirrors they utilize, you know, due to emotion. I've been there plenty of times, you know, and the thing is that we don't get to be allowed to have passion in what we care about and how we can and what we do, but other people do. You know what I mean? That's the unfairness about it. So we can't go for the okie doke with that. And that emotional distress, is find a way to kind of to address it for the kid, and then we can move the learning. And sometimes you can't just move the learning. Sometimes that emotional distress might mean that today in class, y'all, we're not even going to deal with learning today on their curriculum. We're going to just have this conversation around this, if that person's willing to, or if they want to. Because, you know, like, for instance, I had a class, and I'm sorry to take it. I had a class the other day where a kid just busts out to me and is like, yo, I can't get all this work, that I'm way behind. I'm like, yeah, you kind of behind. He's like, yeah, but I'm way behind. I got so much going on. Like my grandfather just died, and I'm homeless, and he's talking. I didn't ask him to do all that talking. He talking. He wants to talk. So I got my lesson posted. But brother, we don't care about that right now. Let's you want to talk, I'll let you talk. I'm gonna just hear you. And when you ready to do this stuff, you want to just miss this day, we'll do this tomorrow. We can learn that stuff any day. But we can't build you any day. We got to build you at the moment, immediately.
So I'm gonna take an alley-oop based off of something you said, and something that Soribel also said. Even something that, based off of the question that my brother even posed. It's crazy that black and brown, we always need to know that we are always going to be judged on emotion, right? Or even like, yo, I don't want to get outcasted based off of the good work I do or something that I do that I know is for the betterment of those that I'm servicing. Because if I do that, then I'll get outcasted by those that don't want the good work done. But the crazy part is that when we're dealing with the thoughts of, or the questions of, damn, am I going to get judged off of my emotion for being too passionate? While there are others that'll sit there in a classroom, right? European, and sit there and call our children stupid, all black and brown children. You so stupid. Oh, how are you doing this? And they say things freely, get their emotions out there, say what the hell they want, and actually get laughed with, not laughed at, laughed with and praised for being honest. Whereas black and Latinos, we need to now walk on glass and figure out what it is that we saying is not going to be taken in a certain emotion because, damn, now I'm the angry that person. And now when I become that angry that person, I got an axe to bury. So, or you speak up on what's going on, and then all of a sudden you become a whistleblower. And, so case in point, just based off of this conversation, sort of somewhat like what Soribel was saying, she and I both went to the same high school. And I had a principal who straight up told me at the time, needless to say, I was getting 90s, 95 in an English class. And then all of a sudden they were telling me that I had to take this class over in summer school because of something that happened. The teacher lied, said that I was going to wait for him outside. And I said something about a sexual preference, none of which ever happened. Had 25 other witnesses, which were classmates that said, nah, that never happened. The principal tells my mother, God rest her soul, well, miss, let's be honest. George is either going to be dead or in jail by the age of 21. So why are we even having this discussion, right? Averaging crazy numbers. Make a long story short, 2 years later, I'm going back to speak to some of the youth once I graduated. The same principal comes to me and says, hey, I heard you got a book out. I heard you touching lives of young students and this, that, and 30 doing. Hey, why don't you come work for me? As Soribel said, I couldn't write that letter. I said, nah, I'm good. And you know why I'm good? Because I don't know if you remember this, but you had told me that I'd be either dead or in jail. She was like, oh my God, I don't remember that. I think you're making that up. That's what offended me more. The fact that you had the guts to say that, right? And my mother being, those who know my mother, she was about 4'11". She was about to jump over the table and kill this woman. Because here it is, a white European woman is telling me that I'm going to be dead or in jail. And 2 years later, ask me, hey, can you come back and speak to my youth? Because here's the background of this whole discussion. Our black and brown youth are money signs. Some of what the policies are in the Board of Ed is if you take in young students with IEPs and special educational needs, they're getting fundage for this. And trust me when I tell you, because I was a dean of the very same school in which I graduated from, but now it wasn't no longer just Seward Park. They were taking in students, making money and trying to find ways, as I was a dean, to try to find me to pretty much put on suspensions on their lifestyles so that now they could kick them out the school, still keep that money. So when I say that all black and brown are really money signs for a lot of these politics and political people, at the end of the day, what I'm saying is, and I say this once again, when you are black and brown, or when you are of ethnic that is in need and you're in these classrooms, CBOs, teachers, I don't care who you are, please be the ones that they need to hear from. Please do not be part of that supremacy and that supremacist thought where you're just hurting our own. And this is for everybody. And I'm not only just talking about principals, teachers, so on and so forth. If you do have anybody of staff that is not of black and brown, hold them accountable for what they do. Do not allow them to hurt our own as well. So, with that being said, I had to say that because truth of the matter is, here we have two powerful people that are in these classrooms and doing the work, the frontline work, and we need more of this. We don't need y'all to be puppeteers. We don't need y'all strings to be still attached to the nonsense that's already been killing us for years.
to George's point,
SoundMinds.
for the record, for those of you who have children in public school systems and in charter schools are included, so don't get it twisted. Want to let you know that October 15 and October 30 play a huge role in our educational systems. Those are the days that the lunch forms are counted for projections for the following year's fundings. So when your child has an evaluation plan, make sure that your child is transitioned. Do not be the parent that decides to continue to get this support knowing that your child is able to actually be in general education and be pulled out of that and become successful without the quote unquote supported services. Don't let these funds, which don't always follow your student or your child, be the reason why your child's school is getting funded the way it does. Special ed teachers and dual bilingual teachers are the ones that are getting paid the most because they have to actually interact with these students, but also their families. So thank you, George, for bringing that up because that's a huge component. Another point that I'm gonna just kind of close out with is do not play down on the role of vulnerability and mental health. We are not by any means or stretch of the imagination in times where we are even built to be in. Our mental health is crucially important right now. And if we do not have the actual tools in place to have access to this information or these informations, we are going to continue to be the demise. So be very mindful of what it is that you're being fed. Question everything. If you are students in college or in high school or in any grade, if your teacher or your professor tells you that you have something to read, ask them why they chose that. And my students who are on here, I have told them, just because I assign something doesn't mean I agree with it. But I need you to understand how these people think, because I am not for this, but I need you to be about it. This is what they have been doing for us so that we can stay where we are. And it's so important that you continue to build on what this information or what both Nartey and I are providing, as well as everybody else. We need our community. We need to continue to build with each other. Black and brown communities need to do more work with coalition building. We got to not just come together in times of hardships. We got to stay together. We can't do the whole Latinos on one side, Black folks are on another side. We can't do that. We have to work together. One is not more oppressed than the other. We have to come together. Yes, we have two lineages of slavery and immigration, but in many instances, we have people who are actually thinking about, well, are you really Black because you speak Spanish? The transatlantic slavery boat stopped in my country. That doesn't mean I'm not Black. I just speak another language, and it was forced on us, right? But we're Black, right? We're Black, and we have to be able to celebrate that in unison. Somebody asked about books. There's a ton of them. Christopher Emden for white teachers and for white teachers who teach in the hood and everybody else is a great one. And he's also into hip hop education. Abolitionist Theories by Benita Love. She does an amazing job. There is another friend of mine, and I will put her out there, Rosa Rivera McCutcheon. She writes on radical care and love, especially in the educational system. I will say start with those because those are great frameworks for us to start thinking about when we think about or the actions on critical relevance for pedagogy or teaching and leadership.
I can jump in real quick. There was a comment you made about Count Day, and Brother George was talking about people being in it to kind of be tools of the program and kind of I've just doing this for 17 years. I've seen that happen where we call parents in, and I've seen schools we call them in, have pizza, everything. Come in here and make sure we get your lunch forms in, and because we want to get that money, but then we not then pushing those services back out to the kids. Or, you get the big thing with ICT. So we'll program kids for ICT courses, but then they come in there and you get them in there and now you're changing up everybody's IEP without really making sure they have the services they need. You want them to have a service, it's more like wanting them to have the services the school wants them to have, so they can now therefore get their IEP money and then get the kids out of there. And, you know, as parents, as communities, a couple of things need to happen. We need to kind of break down mayoral control of our school system in New York, so we can actually have people in the neighborhoods on school boards can have more influence in what's going on. But beyond that, you know, just be, as you said, look at everything. You know, a diploma, a high school diploma, and it's not, it can't be seen as more valuable than actual learning. And I guess what I mean by that is we got a lot of people with our kids and with our parents who, you know, they'll take that diploma. And while we are, let's not even go there, as educators, some educators will feel like if that kid gets a diploma, it doesn't matter if they have nothing going on, but I got them that diploma. At the end of the day, that might not even be meaningful for that kid. It may not change their situation. So we got a lot of schools bragging about graduation rates, and we getting kids to graduate, and they still, you know, working at the car wash, or still working at the laundromat or whatever. Are they not going to school? So we have to make it more than about the diploma, and that's why we have to kind of break down education. You know, as mentioned, it's not a matter of, as mentioned earlier, it needs to be fully deconstructed. I was happy that we shut down during COVID, and I figured it was an opportunity to really rethink about the system. Unfortunately, they still hashing the same stuff out, but it gave us a unique opportunity to hit pause and say, hold up, this whole thing was already developed on white supremacy, on racism, on creating disadvantages, on capitalism. Let's take an opportunity to redevelop all of this, you know, because we have to now see a different value in it. But until we can get it there, just as a community, as parents, etc., we have to make sure that it's not just about saying my child got a diploma or we want to get a diploma. It has to be about what's the value in it, what's the learning in it. You know, what tools and skills do my kids have? Because it's hurtful to be somebody on these front lines, and I get these kids graduating on a regular, and I'm looking at the numbers and saying, wow, if I look at the number of kids who I had graduating in the last, let's say, 7 years, how many of them actually got at least an associate's? You know, how many of them got a bachelor's? How many did anything post-secondary? And it's like, wow, so what are we graduating them for? What are we doing here? So we need to take an opportunity to break down this test prep stuff, you know, to kill education from that point of just getting kids through tests, take some time to rethink how we do in sped ed, and take some time to find a way to get our parents truly involved in this process, you know, on these boards and in these schools on a regular. You know, you got to be in these schools, you got to be breathing down the backs of every school that's going. I really feel like if there's an administrator at a school that they wouldn't allow their kid to enroll into, that school shouldn't exist. You know, that school shouldn't exist, because it has to be equality beyond just that diploma.
1000%. I got one last question. It's a two-part question. One, do you feel that it'll be impactful to add to the curriculum where our young could learn about stocks and bonds, investments, entrepreneurial thought? And if so, or even if not, so do you feel that that would be impactful for our young and needed? But the second question is, why do you think that's not happening right now for our Black and brown youth?
If possible, I'll jump on this. It's not. I mean, it's you got pieces of it. As an economics teacher, it's something that I really focus on, because I see the kids and they say, "Oh, you know, the biggest thing school they failed me on is they didn't teach me about managing money, about having a bank account, about getting loans, whatever." And I'll be like, "Don't you was my student? Stop lying right now. I'll pull out the lesson right now that we told you. I got it on deck. I got your project you did. Don't sit here and say that ain't happened." But the reality is not happening enough. It's not happening frequently enough. And the reality is that we are, as high school students, when it's ready too late to start thinking about it, there needs to be part of the curriculum from the beginning. From the beginning, it has to be part of the curriculum. So that way it just progresses on as they get older and older. But from the high school perspective, it's the test. It's up here. It's about how many regents this kid got, right? They don't care what happens at economic course. I could be teaching film study in my economics class. Nobody would question anything. They wouldn't care, because they only care about those Regents exams and those Regents courses. So until we find a way to deconstruct the value of Regents courses over other courses, right? And really build each course of value, we're gonna stay at that point. But it is valuable. But our school system doesn't care about that for our kids. They care about region schools. But if we can do that, have that economics piece there, the entrepreneurship, businesses, but then connect them to the businesses in the neighborhood. Let's find entrepreneurs in your neighborhood. How do they work? You know, get an internship with them, meet with them, bring the entrepreneurs from the neighborhood, the lady who owns her own the hair salon, you know, or the bodega, or the person who owns the let's say the little art studio. Bring them in and let them talk about entrepreneurship to the kids, how they started their business, what plans they went through, what loops they had to jump through. I think that's where you get that growth at.
Powerful.
Yeah, so to go along with what Nartey is saying, so absolutely it's important. And the reason that it doesn't happen is also, again, going back to the statistics of who's teaching our kids these subjects, right? I think it's 75 to 80% of our students are learning from white people. The fact that we are now causing this uprising is scaring them to all degree, right? So that means that now they see the power of our intellect. It's not that our kids can't think critically. Our kids are not challenged. And when it comes specifically to Black boys in the classrooms, many of them that have quote unquote discipline issues are actually just bored because they get exactly what you're telling them, and they're not necessarily, you're not moving, as they say, the new buzzword, right? You're not moving their needle anywhere. So now they have to wait for everybody else to catch up. And by the time that they get there, they're just like, all right, so what's next? So we also think about what Nartey was saying, right? Bring the hair salon owner, the bodega owner, the laundromat owner, who are usually people that don't have terminal degrees or any degree, but came here with this hustle mentality of let's do the community thing. Let's all pull our money together. You open your store first. When you make your first 10 G's, pass that on and bring it to me. In the Caribbean community, we call that a susu, right? Like pass that on so that we don't necessarily have to just think with this myopic mentality of I'm the only one that's going to make it. Another concept of money matters that folks don't, you know, we used to have junior achievement, which again was always two white people coming into the classroom and teaching us about stock and bonds. But why are you not teaching it from the lamest terms? Why are you not comparing it to something that matters? The day that I walked into a history department to see and revitalize their own curriculum, I had to break out Jay-Z's Magna Carta. I was like, use the Magna Carta, break down those lyrics so that they understand what Magna Carta is. Once they see that you're interested in what they're interested in, flip mode. The students in global studies went from having a 30% passing rate to a 64%. That's huge. It's incremental, but it's cultural relevancy. Do that with stocks and bonds. Utilize beans, coins, whatever you can to speak on why sharing of shares of anything is important to understand. Home ownership. Why are we constantly making this idea of renting the ideal for our students and families? No. Own the hood. If you want to own something, start investing in your hood because that's where the community is going to thrive because the money stays there. Start investing in your hood. If you're going to wait for Citicorp to take down all of the New York City Housing Authority projects because they want to turn them into co-ops themselves, invest in that. Tell Citicorp you're not leaving and you're going to put your $5,000 of subsidized funding that you're going to earn and invest in your hood. If they don't want to displace you or displace you, combat it. It's okay to ask those questions. And we're not taught to challenge that. And all of that has to do with economics. All of it has to do with money matters.
Yo, I'm gonna actually tell you the question that you already answered. Because it was gonna be my last question, but I did a project on hip hop is a pedagogical tool, and I found three paths to this. One is schoolhouse rock. And some of us know if you go on YouTube, you'll find something called "I'm Just a Bill" on Capitol Hill. Hope and pray that I will. And now that everybody's interested in politics right now, go check that out. But that was like bars and making it fun, right? Not making it boring, like basically trying to force us not to learn. You go in some of these classes, like, are y'all trying to force our kids not to learn? But Schoolhouse Rock was this series as one paradigm of using music and culture and entertainment to educate, right? Another one is where you have educators saying, have you looked at the Magna Carta? You know, I had a similar experience with a teacher saying, yo, I tried to do this thing you did, and I tried to bring poetry and rap in the class, and they hated it. And I'm like, well, did you ask them what they listened to? And it was like, this person was oblivious that the first thing the whole point of that, like you said, cultural relevancy. Ask them what they're listening to. Don't just come in and tell them what rap you like or poetry you like, right? And then the third is simply like what I feel like my brothers in the SoundMinds is doing, whether it be you know, tracks like You, Me, We, and other tracks, brothers like Common, brothers like Wally. Song for Assad is a perfect example where Common literally gave you the book of Assad Shakur in rap form, right? So my question was gonna be like, what is the role for hip hop artists and those outside of the classroom? But I'm really just gonna highlight something that y'all said. One is get involved in the community, and Nartey and Dr. Soribel, tell me if I'm misquoting you. But I think one of the things you said is get involved in the community and the stakeholders in the community as well as outside of the classroom, because those are going to be crucial educational points. And if you are one of them listening, know that we real educators value you. We see you outside of the classroom, and we need you to continue teaching when we leave the kids in the school, right? So thank you for being in the community. And then another one is what you just said, right? You said, use the Magna Carta, find out what they're already doing. Education means to bring out, to draw out from within, right? If you go back to the Latin word. So it's like, you're not teaching if you're not looking at who you're in the class with, you know, who's really paying your living and who you're saying you're making you're mastering your craft of education with, and saying, oh, I noticed she was traumatized today before I started teaching the class. And I asked her, how are you doing? And I asked if she needed a break, right? So those are some of the three takeaways that I would say. Like, we have confirmed from the doctors themselves, emotion is crucial. You can't have information without emotion. You can't have intellectual competency without cultural competency. Find out what kids like before you start to give them the metaphors. And you know that everyone in the community is an educator at the end of the day. And I love what Dr. Soribel said off camera before we started. I'm gonna just blow up this spot. She about to cut somebody. She was like, don't get it twisted because it's a doctor in front of my name. And I think if there were more doctors who thought that way, we wouldn't need to be healed as much as we do now. So
yeah, no, I appreciate that. And one of the things that, and I have to give props to, I just love my people, right? So I do have a book out, and the book was written with my students, and I have to give them all the props because these students were just so amazing that they each wrote a chapter, and it's on the chat. It's Rebuilding by and Multilingual Leaders for Socially Just Communities. It is a text, but it speaks about the real traumatizations that happened in our school systems and beyond. And it speaks about family engagement and how you're not just teaching your students, you're teaching their families as well. So I'm so happy to have been here. Like I said, this one was special for me because it's personal. And Georgie, thank you so much for inviting me. I can't be more grateful and appreciative for this.
I want to thank, you know, both. I mean, you Queen, and this brother, my king right here, man. Listen, y'all shine tonight. Y'all shine. The comments was lit. I think there was a lot of gems dropped. I know there was a lot of gems dropped. So this is definitely one of our best episodes, especially on this topic. So this is definitely something I hope we can do again. Have a part 2 too. And yes, I'm just so pleased to meet you too.
If I could just close out, I would just say that, you know, the the same way we kind of hitting that, striking a hammer with an iron is hot right now with a lot of things politically. We need to make sure we're striking it as well educationally. As someone mentioned, learning is online right now. We're in a unique position. We get to really question education right now. It's important that we strike that hammer and ask all those questions right now, demand change right now. Everything is on the table. Everything is on the table because another good thing about this pandemic, and I don't want to say good, but there's a lot of realities that we know that they refuse to recognize existed. And this pandemic has forced them to at least recognize that they exist. They're recognizing the inequality in education. They're recognizing some limitations in it. It's important that we hit that hammer right now. Force curriculum to be changed. Force policies to be changed. Force everything to be changed. Let's open up that can of worms and make it happen. Parents, teachers, educators, principals, everyone involved. So we gotta hit that
he talking
battle.
to us, Self. He talking to us, Self-Suffice. Oh man, he talking straight to us right now. Oh man. He know what time it is, man. That one right there hit home. Once again, man, we appreciate it. We lost our brother, light skin. I don't know what happened. Self.
Well, I want to give light skin a present, but I just need to confirm that I heard this correctly. Y'all gonna be with us every Saturday now, right? That's what you said. Every Saturday.
We gonna have to try to set that up next for 2021, right?
But on the real, no pressure, but can we say that you will be welcome guests in the future? This definitely was one of our greatest podcasts, and just from your facial expression, I'm expecting you to know that like y'all will be back. It would be an honor to have you back. What y'all talked about more education than a lot of people get in years, in this 90 minutes. So it's needed, and I can't thank you enough.
And with that being said, we will see you next SoundMinds Sunday. SoundMinds.